All right, now I'm going to try and sequence the events of the chapter that I just read. So I know that I'm reading the Hoboken Chicken Emergency. So I'm going to write it here. That's the title of the book. And I was reading chapter 4. I need to put the most important events of the story in order from first to last. Well, thinking back, I remember that the first thing that happened was Arthur's father told him he had to give Henrietta back. So I'm going to write that down in this box that says first. First, Arthur's father told him he had to give Henrietta back. That was the first thing that happened in this chapter. Now I need to think about what happened next. Well, I remember that Arthur was feeling upset. His father told him he had to give Henrietta back, but he couldn't argue with his papa, so he actually did go back to Professor Mazzacci's house to give Henrietta back. So that's what I'm going to put in this box that says next. Next, Arthur went back to Professor Mazzacci's house to return Henrietta. Oops, Henrietta has 2 T's, so I'm going to fix it there. Okay, so the next thing that happened was Arthur went back to Professor Mazzacci's house to return Henrietta. All right, let me think about the next event that happened in the chapter. Well, this was most of the chapter because what happened next was Professor Mazzacci was showing Arthur all of the weird animals he raises in his apartment. So that's what I'll write in this box. Then Professor Mazzacci showed Arthur a bunch of animals in his house or his apartment. I'm actually going to give an example because I think that they were such interesting animals. I want to make sure that I write them down in the box. So I'm going to write, for example, he saw a square goldfish. Because that was a pretty important thing that he saw when he was looking at all of those animals. All right, now I'm ready for my last step. Finally. Okay, well, what was the last thing that happened in the chapter? Oh, I remember. Finally, Arthur left Henrietta at Professor Mazzacci's house. It's an apartment, actually. Arthur left Henrietta at Professor Mazzacci's apartment, and started walking home. That was the last thing that happened in this chapter. All right, let me go back and check my work to make sure I got all the important events in the chapter. My book is the Hoboken Chicken Emergency. I read chapter 4. First, Arthur's father told him he had to give Henrietta back. That was the first thing that happened, so I'm good on that. Next, Arthur went back to Professor Mazzacci's house to return Henrietta. Yep, that was the next thing that happened. Then, Professor Mazzacci showed Arthur a bunch of animals in his house. For example, he saw a square goldfish. Yup, that was the next thing that happened. And finally, Arthur left Henrietta at Professor Mazzacci's apartment and started walking home. That was the last thing that happened in the chapter. I think I'm done. Now it's your turn.